What's going on, everyone? So, Mank is now on Netflix and is about the creative process behind Citizen Kane, which is one of my all-time favorite movies. Mank was my second most anticipated movie of 2020. It's also a David Fincher film, and David Fincher happens to be, if you're new to the channel, my favorite film director. No question about it as of right now. I've only seen one of his movies that I didn't like really that much, and that was Alien 3. All his other movies are good to great. Can't lie, though, despite my hype for this movie, as the year progressed, I was excited for it, but also I was holding my reservations for, dialing down the hype. Reason for that is because I just feel like 2020 has been kind of a meh year for movies, unfortunately. That's because a lot of it has to do with, obviously, because of the pandemic. There hasn't really been any movies that have come out. Streaming has made things a little bit more difficult for me personally, but for the most part, I'm giving my viewpoint. I think that's been more difficult to, obviously accommodate that. But anyways, what did I think about this movie? I thought it was solid. I don't want to get into the negatives just yet because I do have a lot of positives about this movie. First of all, David Fincher's directing I think is great. He really does capture the 1940s beautifully. I grew up with a lot of movies from the 1940s and 50s. And when I say grew up, I meant like watching them. But I think he really does emulate the style of that. I also liked how he worked with Kirk Baxter, obviously the editor that he always works with, but he worked with him, and the editing style of this movie is a lot different than their other movies. Don't get me wrong, there's still some scenes that last 2-3 seconds, but they have scenes that last a lot longer than their usual shot length of movies. David Fincher's shots, just like other filmmakers of the 2010s and 2000s, have it where shots last 2-3 seconds, but back in the 1940s, 50s, shots would last like 10 to 20 seconds, sometimes even longer. And that's something that is definitely to be seen with this movie. And I think that that's something that I definitely respect with emulating the time period. The same goes with Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, their score together. I think that these two are incredible together. But I will say, if you didn't know that they composed this film, you would not have thought about it because they don't really have any of their usual motifs or stylistic choices. This is very much so something where they try to emulate the 1940s, like those kind of scores. And they did a great job at it. I mean, if you were to listen to this on its own, you would think that this came from Citizen Kane or something. So props to the filmmakers and, obviously the composers for combining and collaborating together with that. Production design, makeup, is all immaculate as well. Definitely something where I can see it getting Oscar nominations, no doubt about it, because of the details. But I also wanted to say, I absolutely love the visual effects. Visual effects, you say? Like, a lot of people are probably like, what? Hear me out. I said this is my David Fincher ranking list, I believe. But David Fincher, one of the reasons why he's one of my favorite directors, and at that time, I don't think I claimed him to be my favorite just yet. But the reason why he's my favorite now is because so many people are against CGI. It says oh, CGI ruins modern cinema, blah, 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 blah. For me, it's a tool like anything else, and it's all on how to utilize it. And David Fincher shows that. David Fincher's films have more visual effects in terms of CGI than big blockbusters such as Godzilla. And the reason why, you don't think about that is because he has it in such a way where you are emulated to the fact that it blends so well together. You think about the scene, with Tyler Perry and Ben Affleck, where in Gone Girl, where, Tyler Perry's throwing the gummy bears in his mouth. That was CGI, the gummy bears. So, that is impressive timing. You watch that scene, you would not for a second think that. You would think that, oh, this is David Fincher just has to do this in many takes of, getting the gummy bears. But he didn't. And that's what I'm saying. I don't know what was CGI and what was in camera in terms of Mank. And that, I think, is very impressive on its own right. As I already mentioned, I think that in terms of the cinematography and the VFX really blends in a way to only say this. I think it's definitely top 3 well-shot movies of the year. No question about it. But again, huge shout out to the visual effects. I think it's something that not many people are probably saying in their reviews, but they definitely should. They really should in terms of Fincher's work. Those are all the positives, and there's a couple of things I'm sure that I'm missing, but I wanted to say that I don't think this movie is disappointing by no means, but I am disappointed by the fact that I didn't love it. And I think that what's holding that back is that the one nitpick I have with the cinematography is that it was shot on digital. It wasn't shot on film. And I know that sounds hypocritical because it's well, dude, I shot on digital in terms of my movie Incisor, and then my current movie I'm also working on, I'm shooting digitally too. Hear me out though. David Fincher is emulating 1940s. He's trying to perfect it till it looks like a 1940s movie. So why would you shoot on digital though when it looks super clean and sterile, just like all your other movies? Which is fine. I love his cinematography, but I just felt like for emulating 1940s, he should have shot on film. He really should have. Besides that, though, I love the cinematography. Also, I think that the premise is intriguing, no doubt about it. But I think that the way the story was executed, it has moments of intrigue. It does. It has moments where I was immersed. But I just felt like towards that second act, the dialogue kind of got locked in. It felt kind of stuffy and just wasn't really engaging. And that was locked in as well with the pacing. The pacing kind of halted. It didn't have that momentum that the first act and to some extent the third act had. And I think that might be just obviously like a personal opinion because, I know a lot of people in Letterboxd that I follow really are digging this movie and don't have an issue with the pacing. But I definitely think that this movie is not really for casual moviegoers because of those reasons. And the other thing that I had was, although I wanted to love this story, I just thought that the story, I didn't really get much out of it. Some of this I already knew based on, the history of Citizen Kane. But I never left the movie saying, oh, wow, like these ideas, these themes were really intriguing. I didn't have that effect. David Fincher's movies always had that effect on me to some extent. And I just felt disappointed that I didn't have that with Mank. I wanted to. I really did. Now, again, this is all upon first viewing. I'm saying this right now. Maybe when I give it a second chance, like maybe these themes will resonate with me more. But for now, I just wasn't really able to latch on to these. These characters are made from a distance as well. But I still respect, the character development, the acting with what they did. But I just think that overall, there are a couple issues I have here and there that, obviously dial it back from being like a great movie or even a good movie. I think this is a rock solid movie. It definitely has its positives and negatives, but I'm leaning more towards positive because, again, it is a well-crafted movie, and I can see why a lot of people are loving it. And for me, Mank, I will be giving a 3.5 out of 5 star rating, which gets the good old Texas Pete hot sauce. Rock solid movie. I would definitely say check it out, especially if you're like a film buff or a film critic. For average audience members, I don't know. On the fence about that. I would say, go at your own risk. But anyways, guys, Mank, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, as well as how you think it compares to Citizen Kane. Let me know down below. And as always, don't forget subscription, notification bell, and I'll catch you guys later.